We should be live. Welcome to Marketing Adventures with Carmel. It's my pleasure to be here. And if you're watching me on Facebook or LinkedIn, any of the social media channels, please pop a like or a comment below, and we will certainly answer those as we go or afterwards as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button so we can bring you more tips, insights, and interviews with some amazing business owners and entrepreneurs that help you and inspire you along your journey so that you don't feel on your own. And also, they have some great tips and insights to share with you too. Just like my amazing guest today, who is Santosh, all the way from, where are you from, Santosh? Tell us.
From Bangalore, India. Namaste.
Yeah, namaste. So let me introduce you correctly and not just throw you in there. So today we're going to be talking about to discover the very unique triple R method to reinvent yourself. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Santosh. Santosh is a storyteller, management consultant, and a brain power coach with over 2 decades of international experience across Asia, North America, and Europe. So, well-traveled man. Santosh was employed with GE Capital, IBM, Fidelity Investments, and in his last role was heading the HR operations excellence for APAC region at Deutsche Bank. So a very insightful and informed gentleman. So Santosh likes to diagnose and address the issues of his clients across physical, spiritual, nutritional, and psychological aspects. So many areas that as an entrepreneur we don't always address. We push ourselves too hard sometimes. And he uses credible surveys, apps, and coaching methodologies developed from years of research and experience. So, as I said, his unique coaching formula that is unique to him, the RRR, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. It helps in relieving old baggage, relearning certain fundamentals, and reloading strengths from talents, and resurrecting lives overall. So I've almost told you the 3 R's. But anyway, welcome, Santosh. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Carmel.
It's a
Pleasure to
pleasure
be
to have
here.
you. Awesome. So give us a little bit of insight, first and foremost, where we start. Like, who was Santosh, and what was a bit of your journey and things you had to overcome to get to where you are now, doing what you're doing now?
Well, thank you. Thank you, first of all, and or once again for having me. Well, it has been quite a journey, if I have to say. It's like, every year end, the kind of a reaction I have is like a hooah, it's like something like that. It's like never has been a dull moment. Um, I started off sometime in 1997, maybe as a telemarketer. If I have to, in a very small organization, which was from your part of the world, that's from down under, from New Zealand rather. And they were hiring people, and I was not even in college when I took that job. So it's from there to be running a consulting firm today for a decade. Quite a journey, if I can say so. So originally,
Absolutely.
I've been a sportsman, and then life takes its different turns or gives you, throws its various curveballs. It's about navigating, learning, falling, and therefore, of late, I have come up with a new tagline, which is shaped by failure, driven by strength. So that's what I use nowadays, even with people I coach. As a strengths coach, I help people rely more on their strengths and to dust off all those failures. Failures are those stepping stones. So that's why I'm even calling my program at the end as Reload and Resurrect.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. Shaped by failure and driven by strength. That's amazing. So give us a little bit of insight into, and look, we know culturally, the same as I'm from Ireland, you're from India, people live in Australia, whatever, but there are sometimes cultural biases, let's say. So quite often, so as you say, you started as a telemarketer. So how did a telemarketer then move all the way up to working for Deutsche Bank, IBM, and things like that? Because, sometimes telemarketer They just end up being a telemarketer. What was it that made you change and take those steps and get into such a high position?
Well, yeah, I think that's a fantastic question because culturally in India, people are perceived to be doing some things. Now, in that sense, I have not been a very average Indian myself, at least living in India. Because
Yeah,
I've grown up from a very different kind of a background. I've always traveled since a 4 or 5 year old, which shows even in my career. And one of those things I can say is one thing that was encouraged in our household was whenever you fail, you learn, and that's what continued in sport. Being a sportsman,
yeah,
before I became a telemarketer, I was a state squash champion. So when you're in sport, you realize when you lose, you screwed up, and you got to move forward. You don't blame much on somebody
yeah,
else. So I was living alone at that point in time, so I had to fund my education. So I got a job which pays me well for 4 hours a day, and also go to college. So this was the best job to sell 4 hours on the phone,
yeah,
and whatever I make, I could spend for fund my education. And in the mornings, go to college, and in the afternoons, I'm telemarketing for a hotel group and you say cultural. My manager was from New Zealand, but his origin was Sri Lankan, and his wife was Australian. So you can imagine my manager and his wife, they're already coming from South Asia to down under,
yeah,
and we all speak English. So there's not
yeah,
much there, but we all had a common goal. We had to sell the hotel we were actually telemarketing for. So
yeah.
that's how I started, 1997 May.
Yeah. And what brought you to like ended up being in human resources in Deutsche Bank, for example? Where did that come in?
Oh, well, doing what I was doing, I was good on the phone. I was selling, so the same thing continued. Uh, And as I kept selling on the phone, there were people from the United States who were looking for outsourcing business, coming in. And there were a few pioneers in India who actually did that, and that was GE. And GE was looking for people who could talk on the phone. That's it, you know.
Yeah.
And sometime I did this for the hotels which I was working for about close to 2.5 years, from 97 to 99. In 99, I realized that a friend of mine bumps into me in a mall and says, I think you should join GE. And I said, listen, mate, I don't think I fit into GE. I'm still studying, and I don't think I'm yet there. He said, no, you're the best. You can fit in. And a conversation in a mall, by chance, I went for an interview. And next thing I know, December 1999, I'm hired by GE Capital for the first call center in India.
Wow.
And talking on the phone sometimes, and I didn't know how it's talking on the phone wasn't something which was very difficult because many of us actually love to talk on the phone. But when I didn't realize that it can make you a career, and I joined GE, and there's no stopping after that.
Yeah. Okay.
And
And
GE was where I learned about not only talking on the phone. I was a specialist in the laws of compliance, consumer laws that I learned in GE. So then, for whatever laws I learned, I was to work with attorney generals and the Federal Trade Commission in the US. And very soon, I find myself interacting with governors in the states in the US for telemarketing laws and consumer laws and ensuring those laws are followed from India. So
wow.
my whole life went into the legal profession. And then
Right.
the companies from all over India wanted me on their compliance board.
Right.
And that's how
Wow.
IBM got me.
Yeah.
And doing what I was doing, I was working for a British bank for IBM, and these guys, that's Lloyd's TSB, you should know them very well. And Lloyd's Bank is pretty old in the UK.
Yeah.
So while I was working for them, they had a new business in IBM, and they said we need somebody with legal experience. So they packed me off to the US sometime in 2004 and said you need to bring Dun and Bradstreet to India. So there I was in US, trying to bring Dun and Bradstreet to India, Christmas in New York.
Yeah, amazing. Oops, there you go, your phone. So what I'm hearing though, underneath all that is, it's oh, you're dropping off, is a willingness to, as you say, to grab opportunity of working those 4 hours initially so that you you keep follow so that you could actually study and go to school. So some people would say, oh, there's just telemarketers, whereas you were using what you could to earn as much as you could. You were being clever to put yourself through your studies, which is actually amazing, and that led to opportunity after opportunity. So I think the message that I'm getting is sometimes it's do what you got to do to get to where you want to go.
Yes, and one of those other elements is the way we react to circumstances. And that's something
Yeah.
I emphasize a lot in my coaching as well. I call it what is your processing score? Being that, being myself who has, I never wanted to be a telemarketer. I never wanted to work in a GE. I never thought of all these things. It was not a script.
Yeah.
It was about survival, and we do different things under survival mode, and we do
Yes.
the different things in a confident mode. We do some things in a crazier mode. So it's about what kind of a mood and the way you process information and the way you react. That's critical. And even in sport, if you're going to keep losing it, you keep losing points to your opponent. No point shouting at the umpire or the referee. So
Yeah.
you got to calm down and do what you got to do. So I think that comes from sport to a great extent that you're playing within the rules. But in
Yeah.
life as well, I believe it's important to be able to try and understand that
Yeah.
no matter what comes your way, it's the way we react, and you never know that one single small situation can probably be a big opening, and who knows
Yeah.
which bus will take you where.
And I like that analogy with sport because when you're playing any sport, obviously the objective is to score a goal or score a point. And you never know when the opportunity is going to come up. You're like, you can head towards it, but you'll zigzag whatever way until your opponent is out of the way for that moment and you have the opportunity. So it's very like that. It's like, be ready for when opportunity shows its face, and therefore, so that you can take that
I
opportunity.
remember a quote. I remember the quote. It says when preparation meets opportunity, it's called luck. So
All right. I like that. I like that. So,
yeah,
what's the biggest factor now, do you believe, that has helped you to be successful?
I don't think it's one factor at all. It's about doing what you do, keep doing what you do. It's about focusing on your talents, keep putting effort. Uh, and when you get those opportunities, you take them. And when you fall, you get up. You get, that's what I believe as I keep calling
Yeah.
resurrect. That you wake up, you look at it as a learning, and we have different ways of learning. And one of those critical things I would say is education and learning is a lifelong exercise.
Yeah.
It can't be that I have achieved this or it has happened off late or suddenly, and nobody ends up learning everything with an MBA. It is a learning for a lifetime, and it's
Yeah.
about how you
It's
manage your
layers,
knowledge. Yeah, it's
isn't
about
it?
how you
It's
manage your
layers.
knowledge and
Yeah.
keep open. My mantra is keep an open mind. It helps you learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you think of this statement that you can learn all of the information, but it's actually applying it to a skill, to practice, practice, practice is where the actual deepness and the success comes.
Yeah, the human psychology of learning is you learn, you implement, you practice, you master.
Implement. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I
And
love it.
a lot of times the kind of systems we have at play as education or corporate, there is learning and then and a certificate.
Yes,
There's very little
yes.
emphasis on implementation.
Implementation.
And yeah,
Yes.
and when you implement and you execute, you get to those, you start failing, or you start
Yeah,
learning those nuances, you start
yeah.
falling, and I think that's where champions are made.
A
It
million
can't
percent.
be, and it can't be, and never is the scenario wherein you just go and attend this 5-day boot camp and you get out as an American soldier or a Marine. You can go and take over a big war. Sorry, you can't do that. You have to put in those hours to be able to put what you learn into practice, and
Yeah,
only after that you get that kind of mastery over a period of time.
yeah.
And That's where lies the secret. The secret isn't doing it. As in, you and me can have loads of ideas, but unless and until
You do,
those
absolutely.
ideas are
And
tried, we don't know where we stand.
no, it's like you can read a book to teach you how to swim. But until you get into the water, feel the water on you, you
Absolutely.
feel the stroke in it, you don't know how to swim. And that's why it's so good to have a coach or a mentor, because they could be outside the water watching how you're moving your elbow, how you're moving your arm, and what needs to change in that. So it is the implementation, and especially entrepreneurial people, there's no shortage of ideas, none whatsoever. It's amazing, but it's the implementation of them that makes the difference. So just before we hop into the three R's, if you had one, and I know there are no mistakes per se, but if you were to kind of mention one mistake that along the way you've made that you might like to change, what would that one mistake be?
One of those, I have made actually many,
Oh, as we
but
all have.
but one I would want to probably focus on for this purpose is having a bias. Having cognitive bias. I'm not
Yeah.
saying, or say at a certain point in my life, I was quick to judge. Let me say, I mean, sometimes you get to do a job, and the job gives, while you do that often, it also gives you some, like what we call as all houses have a balcony and a basement. Balcony we want to show off, and basement we hide the stuff. You know,
Yes. Yes,
so
I love that. Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, so in that sense, I would say that when we keep pushing stuff down the basement, one day the basement becomes full, and that's a problem as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when you keep doing your job, we don't want to have some of those negative things, which I would call a basement as a metaphor. We don't want those things to also have an impact on our lives, especially like when I say a bias or judge, when somebody has a certain trait in which the way they speak, we prejudge them and say, "Oh, this guy, I know this guy how he is,"
Yes.
or having, for example, this, or another way to saying is that is to have a prejudice and say, "Okay, I know
Yeah.
everything," you know,
Yeah.
and that reminds me of that very famous book. I'm sure every girl in her teens would read, Pride and Prejudice, about everybody knows what's prejudice,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we all suffer with these things, and I was one of them who had this. And I would
Mm,
definitely say
mm,
that
mm.
when I would encounter certain scenarios, I used to have, it's like it's human. It's for
Yeah.
everybody has it. It's like everybody we meet, we or whatever experience we have had becomes a file in our mind, and we store it. And when we meet somebody new, we want to actually measure it and say, compare it and say, do I know this thing? We search for familiarity patterns, and then say,
Yeah.
okay, I know this. I don't need you to tell me what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I believe that was a hindrance in my learning. If I would not
Yes.
believe that there's a reason for me to probably learn something.
Yeah.
So I would
I
want to
like that.
emphasize on that, because many
Yeah.
people suffer with cognitive biases, or sometimes it is post trauma. They have certain things which are holding them by and things like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's
those
it's
kinds of things are
yeah.
something I would say I suffered with as well, because of my own instances or experiences. But I would say that I started to recognize them. So acknowledgement is the first part for a problem.
Ah, absolutely. The first step. And it's kind of like we talked at the beginning of the call. People have a certain cognitive bias to hearing an accent, even, for example. I'm Irish originally. People think that I'm great fun. I must be a heavy drinker. I must be this, that, the other. And it's like, oh, well, no. I actually use another term for the similar thing. And I call it the already always listening pattern. So it's you see somebody who's tall, small, or you meet someone that you've met before and maybe had a not so great experience with them. You're already listening to them
Yeah.
how you last experienced them. So we all know in any kind of personal development, we've sometimes had an overnight change. That person doesn't have any space to change in your eyes if you're already always listening to them how you last
So that's why
experienced.
that's the critical term is judge. Don't judge.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
final.
The thing about that is, though, that's an interesting topic. I think as human beings, we have to somewhat judge, because inherently it's in us. Is that person, do I eat them? Do I run away from them? Do I mate with them? That's inherent in us for a danger. But what you hit on earlier is right, is our mind is quite lazy in some ways, because 4 million bits of information on a minimum are hitting us all the time. So it goes and puts things back into that file and go, oh yeah, I've experienced this before. Oh yeah, I've heard somebody like that before. Oh yeah, I've experienced somebody like that before. So it's like, oh, I've seen a yellow car before, so all yellow cars are the same. Well, actually, that one has gold locks somewhere. It's like, oh, I didn't see that because it was just a yellow car. So our mind goes to habit. It likes those pathways that it's used to. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's great. So we could talk about that for ages, I think, Santosh. But what I really want to get into today to really support people is, tell us about the triple R method to reinvent yourself. So give us an overall and some insight into what is that and how do we reinvent ourselves?
Sure. Actually, I've been writing about this for a while, and especially since the first lockdown happened. And one of those new habits that I've identified in myself is writing. It's not something that I've done in the past. I've been only reading. So when I started writing, two things happened. One is it was a liberating experience. I felt good after writing. And secondly, there is this, when you're writing, you look for more clarity than speaking, because
Yeah.
you're trying to communicate something. Yeah. And once the first year of the pandemic went by, I wrote about half a dozen articles, yeah, or something like that, or probably lesser
Yeah.
than that. But the second lockdown happened. I said this was a good thing to do, and I did more of it. And when I was doing that, I was seeing the impact of the first lockdown that happened. People were put into new issues. They were facing new challenges. Work from home for some
Yeah.
was good; it was a boon. For some, it wasn't. Some people who wanted to socialize, they were not getting it, and some people were having mental health problems. Some people were anxious, what's going to happen. Some people were laid off. Lots happening on the planet,
Yeah.
and it is something we have never seen in a lifetime. And many
Yeah.
people have not come across this in a lifetime. And then you see horrifying news, people dying in by the thousands and things like that. So this was not good for many. And being a coach, it's for me as well. Even I have to reinvent my profession, right? From being on, I have to make my mechanism has to go online. I have to reinvent my own practice.
Yes.
It's not about me just being able to write and influence, but it's about me doing it other way around. I have to go online. I have to start telling people or communicating more about these things. So when I was going through these spaces, I realized very well that I needed to up my own game because people are going through different issues. It's not the same old elephant in the room, but there are more elephants.
Yeah.
So that's where when I was doing that, I have realized some things which work, which don't, because being a consultant, I have, and working in various functions in various companies, I have seen many situations, but not many have seen that. So I'm able to try and say this is easy to work because I know myself, you know,
Yeah.
I'm self aware to be able to do that. And that's when I believed that I have to try and develop something which is going to work. And I tried about two or three mechanisms like this, which did work. So that's why I say shaped by failure because it didn't happen. So the second lockdown almost was ending, and
Yeah.
even I didn't meet marketing gurus on the online world, and I'm no marketing person to be able to be able to get that kind of traction online. So I was saying I stick to what I was doing. So when I forecasted this and looked at it last July or August, I've got the Brains magazine got in touch with me and they said, "Hey, you seem to be doing a lot of writing. Will you write for us?" And then I started writing for them, and people started responding, and I started talking to more people, and things started happening. So when I started writing about well-being, and every month there was an article of mine published by this magazine, and thankfully they recognized me as one of the top 500 people, Brains 500 global, whatever. But the thing what happened to me was what helped me was the fact that when I kept writing these things, I was also focusing on an important aspect called mental health. And that's
Yes.
when I said I have to create a new product, and how that's I created that, and I merged it with the launch of my product with the Matrix movie, which was
Ah,
getting released, because
yes,
I
yes.
thought that was one of a cult movie that many people have a recall value for, and that's why I said Matrix Resurrection, and I call this as Relieve, Reload, and Resurrect as RRR as my program,
Yeah.
which basically in short term is to say that we get rid of old baggage, we reload ourselves with our learnings and our strengths and talents, get rid of all the baggage. First of all, that's important, including people, get rid of toxic people. Reload yourselves on what your learnings are and launch yourself, resurrect. That means you start doing something new, and that's the best way out of the pandemic.
Yeah. So give us just, I know we could talk about this for ages, but give us one example of each. So give us an example, a real life example of being able to relieve. Like, what are you talking about in that area?
As I just alluded to it, relief is people want to have good. It's about the first thing is get rid of all the cobwebs in the head. There's a lot of baggage in between those years. There are lots of fears. There are lots of thoughts which are stuck in the head. We have to get them out. Basically, that's what it is. Relief is everything about baggage, anything that is weighing us down. So it's about, yes, we all have stuck in lockdowns, work from home happened. First thing first is to go out into nature, get more oxygen into the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. And get rid of, and as the more oxygen gets pumped into your lungs, your mind starts opening up. Get rid of everything from your mind that has been weighing you down. That's relieving. You need to get yourself all the mental stress out. So that's what I believe in relief. Obviously, the way I do it is different. I get people to start writing it. I don't. This is an exercise that I want people to write about it. I don't want them to tell me. It's not for me. It's for them.
Yeah.
So relief is all about getting rid of all those pounds hanging on your ankles. Get rid of everything that's in between your ears. Shunya, get become zero. It's a form of meditation, which is they say is the highest form of meditation, which means just empty your mind totally. Get rid of everything, and that is where your liberation starts.
Yeah. And it's quite, I'm going to say challenging. People find it quite challenging to empty the mind out because they're so busy. They're always trying to do stuff. So one of the best ways is to just write, have a journal, just write until you can't write anymore with no agenda, just whatever comes out. And your creative self and your entrepreneurial self is in there, but it gets muddied with all the other stuff. So when you write with no agenda, no judgment, it eventually, it's like telling somebody, it's like unburdening yourself. So tell us about the reload then. Once you've done all that, tell us, give us an example of how to reload.
The only addition I would say to what you said is I facilitate that writing in my
Right.
program, so that it's about trying to, rather than make it a quality exercise. Well, anybody has the freedom to do it themselves, but it's just that I
Mm-hmm.
facilitate that writing so that they're able to. In terms of reload, well, I do couple of things. One is I have been working. I had the opportunity to actually learn about mental health a lot last year, and I've been working on trying to get the right blend of questions out to be able to ascertain what's wrong with people. And it's not about performance. You can be high at your heart peaks of performance, but at the same time, you might be depressed. So it's about how you feel. That's what I call. What is your processing score? How are you responding to situations in your life? How are you processing information? Are you feeling good about it, or are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling stressed about doing a few things? So that is where I believe that the reload aspect is to try and understand if there is anything that is a concern. And once that is eliminated, we do a couple of psychometric assessments to bring out the talents and strengths. I have been using Gallup for the last 12 to 14 years. and to amazing benefits to myself and everybody who's worked with me and the
Yeah.
companies I've consulted, be it banks or legal startups. So it's been fascinating, as in when people believe in themselves and they just want to take off from where they were yesterday, trying to hide in a room, to next morning they say, "I want to go on this adventure bike ride." So it's quite a
Right.
paradigm shift where you experience
Okay.
people start
Awesome.
believing in themselves, and being a part of a journey like that is also very liberating to me because you just behind the scenes, you don't want all the action to yourself, but you can say, you feel like the kingmaker of sorts. That what I didn't, I whom look at him, he's the one who did it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even they feel
Amazing.
good, and then the people who go through this as well, they feel good about it because the focus is back on themselves. They're able to go out and reload themselves with what they are, their true talent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once that getting rid of the baggage and trying to let them only focus on their talents and strengths is this reload aspect. And
Yeah.
a lot of conversations, lots of questions. But yes, people will say, when do I start getting into action? And that's when I believe reload is done because they want to go and use it. It's when
Right.
they say, okay,
Okay.
my knife is sharp enough. I want to go out there. I want to get in the
Yeah.
kitchen. And that's when I feel reload happen. But until then, it's a lot of, sometimes it takes a couple of months or more. But the fact
Yeah.
is, they need to feel it. And I know when it feels. So I'm sure even you can. When you feel it, that you say, hey, I'm ready. Can I
Yeah.
try
Yeah.
this,
There we
please?
go.
You know,
And then the last part is resurrect. So once you've done that, so once you've kind of got rid of all the stuff and then you've really worked on how to reload, how to get yourself ready. So what about the resurrect? Give us a real life example of that.
example of that is when somebody is able to say, when they are ready and say, I want to go for it, that's when I give them a writing exercise about saying, okay, what do you think is your definition of well-being? What's your definition of of a goal for life or a career
Yeah.
goal? And what do you want to achieve? And I help somebody with on one project. As part of my package, it's like I say, I will work with you for one project. It's not like I just help you do all these things and leave. I will work with them for 6 months, 1 year, whatever that duration is, and say I'll work with you on one project and give them a certain format which they have to fill up. Filling this up is quite an exercise because I get them to focus on those, not only goal but sharpen it down to what that critical X is that they have to achieve. How long will they take? Is it relevant and is it making sense? For them to do it. Is that something really absolutely adventurous or diabolically different that they want to do? How crazy is it? No matter what it is, but the fact is, I want them to be. They should be able to measure that. They should be able to attain it, and it has to be relevant and time bound, which we call smart goals.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
to try and help them do that at the same time, prepare them for it. So that's when I do that pilot exercise, which I call it the pilot exercise. They have to do that and go for that, and in a what I would call in a STP condition, standard temperature and pressure. That means they are like right now you can try it in a small occasion on a small place and see whether your solution for your life works with you, and then it's all yours to feel free. So depends on what they want to choose because coaching is all about asking the right questions. But I have all these options that I'm able to give people that they're able to go right down and create a kind of a project for themselves and get started on it. And resurrection happens when they finish that project successfully and they say, and I say, yes, you all said, mate, go for it.
Yeah, you're all set, mate. Bringing in a bit of down under there. So tell me, what are your own specific success habits that you've implemented so that you can actually be the person you need to be to support and deliver this to other people?
One is, every client of mine has been teaching me. You know, I learn from every client.
Yeah.
It's that's what I can say is because for me every interaction is an offering. I'm
Yeah.
even learning when I'm speaking to you, probably as to how I can interview people. So,
That's okay. But what I mean
but
is for for you to be the best version of you, like people always are curious about what habits people have put in place. You know, some people get up early in the morning, some people practice yoga, some people write. What are your own personal success habits that you have
Well,
implemented for you?
I have taken this away from Gallup. It's one of the articles I've written last year. My personal well-being is a product of seven factors.
Yeah.
It is looking at career, financial, physical, social, community, spiritual, and the other one which I was kept talking about as the processing score. So these are the seven elements which I look at to be able to say how I'm doing.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to people, in terms of where I am, one of the other things I've written in my blog some time back was, say, 2010 or 2011. I was heading APAC for Deutsche Bank. It's one of the biggest investment banks on the planet. So while I was doing that, and I was going to the gym, it was 5 days a week. I was doing very well. Regional team heading. It was a fantastic job, pays me well. But in 2011, I decided to leave it and
Yeah.
start on my own after a 3 month sabbatical. From the time I started in February 2012 to now, when I'm talking to you almost Feb 2022, it's 10 years. In the last 10 years, I can tell you I have probably dropped about five or six bad habits. I have restarted or relearned my whole spiritual process.
Yeah.
I have overcome certain biases and what I told you as mistakes or what we started off earlier. What I was having in my own interactions and my own processing. So those I've undergone a change, and as an entrepreneur, made fantastic mistakes, really mistakes,
I love
and
that.
learned from them.
Fantastic
So
mistakes.
yeah,
Fantastic
it's a
ones.
fantastic mistake. I have traveled. It's like I have gone and invested in things which anybody would think of and say you're such a nut to do it. I went into a forest and started investing in tree houses, and nothing came back out of that. But the trees live today.
I love it. I
So,
love it.
I have, that's why I call them fantastic because it was adventurous and whatever I did, it gave me
Yeah.
something, but it didn't give me out much. But there were some things I have prepared workshops on. So it probably are sustainable solutions for tomorrow when we try and protect the planet. But I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've done something like that. I have done crazy things like that. But it's just that I would say 15 years back I wouldn't do that. But
Yeah.
at a certain point, I said, give it a try. Go and explore the world. Go and make
Yeah.
some mistakes.
Yeah. And it
You know,
does, I think it feeds into, like, we have human needs and things like this. We have core needs. And some of us have higher needs for adventure or exploration. One of my high things is exploring. So I need that bit of adventure. So doing that, even though it's a fantastic mistake, as you call it, it doesn't matter because the feeling of joy you got doing it, even though what didn't manifest in whatever, was still that experience that you needed at that time to make your heart
yeah,
sing.
and I was traveling with a dog. I enjoyed it all the more. I didn't need any other company.
Yeah.
So, man is very social, but I started enjoying my solitude. It was not like not liking my loneliness. I was
Yeah.
enjoying my solitude, but with my dog. So I
Yeah.
traveled about 20,000 kilometers in a four-wheel drive with my dog. And no doubt I spent money in it on the fuel and all the places lived, the pet friendly places. But guess what? It was one of the most, memorable experiences anybody can have,
Right.
a
Amazing.
call of the wild kind of a moment.
Yeah.
And everybody should do that sometime. You spend
Yeah.
time in nature, and if you have a good buddy, nothing like it, especially a dog.
Yeah, and you know what? Spending time in nature doesn't have to be difficult. You know, you can literally just kind of go outside and organize that. But I'm sure we could talk about this forever. Tell me how, because we're almost up in time, so I'm just mindful of the time. So tell me what part now in all of this coaching and all of your communicating with other people, what part does video play within that rather than just the written word and emails and text? What part does video play in enhancing that experience for you and your clients?
You say video?
Mm.
That's exactly on my goal. I was planning to drive out day after tomorrow to this place about 200 kilometers east of Bangalore, where I am living, and that's a place I take off very often. To It's away in the wilderness. It's away from people, and they have internet. So I was planning to do more
Right.
videos, and some of the products I've launched during the lockdown. That's about how to get ideas, how to put ideas into action, how
Yes.
to assess risk, how to manage risk, and that was the second thing because a lot of life is managing risk successfully. You don't,
Awesome.
you never eliminate risk. It's about managing risk, and that's something I learned on the job. And the second thing is about, one is idea, second is managing risk. The third part is about a new program that I have been working on over the last 2 3 weeks, extension of the Christmas holidays, if I can say, and I've named it after the new variant Omicron. I call it Omico. That's maybe probably the Chinese way of saying Omicron, Omico. So it's a program I've developed for companies, which includes videos as questions for people, and about trying to get people to think about what's working with them as we are on the cusp of the what they call the Great Resignation happening, and about
It is.
and people getting fired on Zoom calls, the kinds of things happening. It's
Uh,
crazy.
I know
And
it's.
as we speak, I'm just going to be posting a pretty long article on LinkedIn sometime later
Right.
today. I was writing it all day long about Oh My Co because I was trying to load it up into a kind of a series of posts before that gets loaded. So video is the in thing that I'm going to be doing a lot of. And
Yeah.
thank you, Carmel, because of you, I've started that.
You're very welcome. So I have two more questions for you. And number
Yeah.
one is, if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do that? Is that via LinkedIn, which I'm just putting up on the bottom now?
Yeah. LinkedIn is the best.
Yeah,
You can,
LinkedIn, or they can email you on
or
this
email
email
me.
address.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Easy.
So we have your name and we have LinkedIn. Just Google him. You'll find him on LinkedIn or his email address. Now, the next and last question that I always ask my guests at the end: if you were not doing what you're doing today, right now, what would you be doing instead?
I would be driving somewhere,
Okay. You
driving
love
and
driving.
exploring the world. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would be driving
Okay.
somewhere. I love to drive, and I think the better part of my corporate life, I was not able to drive, but I was flying around, thanks to the company. But
Yeah.
the least I can say is I would be driving somewhere, meeting new people, and learning about their culture and talking about what culture I come from. Because it's one of the most what I would say one of the finest learning moments in your life is when you meet new people, learn about their culture, and as a traveler, you're so open, and there is so
Yes.
little that you know, and
Yeah.
that part of where that curiosity.
Yeah.
Recently I gave a speech where and I said if there is anything as one quality that somebody can continue after post-pandemic as that's to be a constant is to be insatiably curious. You have to be
Curious.
extremely curious,
Yes. I
and
love
you're
curious.
always, and as a traveler, and when you're driving, you learn about the weather, you learn about so many things,
Yeah.
and you're on the road.
Absolutely.
It's not about flying high. You have your feet on the ground, and you're curious about how things go. Hey, where do I do
Yeah.
this? Where do I do that? What can I
Yeah.
do here?
Yeah.
What can I do there? So
I totally
it's such a
agree. Yeah.
practical experience of curiosity. The more you do that, I think the better for us because I think coming out of the lockdowns, that's the first thing I would ask somebody to do: go to the closest nature retreat place, practice some yoga, and
Yeah.
reconnect with nature as a traveler. All
Yeah.
curiosity, all the good habits start fitting into you.
I love it because that's how I've learned everything. I mean, I wasn't a techie person or anything at all, but I got really curious because I was doing a lot of study online. I was like, I either embrace this technology or I miss out. So I literally used to stand on somebody's shoulder going, how do you do that? How do you do that? What did you press on that? And became this little 3-year-old with an insatiable curiosity, which I still bring
Yeah,
in now, because when you're curious about people, and I love what you said about travel, and it's so true. When you travel, you don't know, so therefore you are naturally curious. But when you're in your own environment, you tend to have that cognitive bias that you talked about earlier. It's like, oh, everything is this way. But when you can open up to having a curiosity, you know what? World becomes so much more exciting and so much more fun.
absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining us, Santosh. I'm sure we could talk forever and a day, but that's okay. But for now, I'm going to let you go. Guys, if you're watching this and you're watching the replay perhaps, and you still want to ask myself or Santosh a question, pop it in the comments and we'll make sure that we answer that. If I can't, Santosh will, and vice versa. So again, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and that little bell so you get alerted.
Namaste.
If you're watching this on social media, give us a like and share it with anyone else that you believe may need to hear some of this so that it can maybe pique their curiosity. So for now, it's bye from me and bye from him.
Namaste again.